Ann Cornick from Paint and Porcelain. I'm here to teach beginners how to get started in China painting and also to encourage those of you that have been painting a while to paint along with us. And I know there are a lot of you out there who are. Today we're going to be working on pine cones. It'll be the second fire and the final fire of our pine cones. So we're going to work on the pine cones. I'm going to show you what we're aiming for. So this is what I've done so far. And one thing I did that I didn't tell you about, but I discovered afterwards, was I took my eraser or sponge, and on this one, which is the lighter of the two, I just took the sponge before I fired it on the last fire, and I just pounced a little so it was lighter than this pine cone in the back, because this one is going to have more light on it, and I wanted to make sure it was brighter. So that's just a little trick. Now, if you do that, let it set up a little bit. Don't do it right away because you'll take off most of the paint. Let it set up a little bit and then just do one solid pounce. Don't keep pouncing on it unless you really need to for some reason. So we're going to work on this, but what we're going to try to do is get it to look more like this. So you can see here I put gold on it just recently. That's Roman gold. I think it's a little too dark for this, but this is for me, so I don't care. I like it. But what we're going to do on the stein is we're going to put this color up at the top and at the bottom and a little bit of gold on it. And I'm going to show you how we did this. Now, this is without background. I also completed one with background. And I put the background behind the pine needles as a shading green. On the first fire, instead of the pine needles, I put shading green here, here, and I actually did it like that. I just pulled it out, but I used a brush, a thin, like a number 4 thin brush, and just pulled it out. I also then went through and put light blues here, and this is a chartreuse, and this is all yellow, and put it behind on the first fire. Then on the second fire, I went through and put my pine needles in and pulled them out and did all the things we're going to be doing today, but I also darkened the background where I wanted to. And I used black blue, big surprise, on my blues because I just thought it turned out gorgeous, but I'm real pleased with this. So that gives you a couple of different ways that you can do this. The colors we're going to use for today are, we're going to use pecan. This is pecan up here, but it's very similar to baker's brown, and it's also like yellow brown number 2. Now, regular yellow brown is more yellowy than this and lighter. Yellow brown number 2 is usually this color, so if you have that, that's great. Rich brown is this color, and then we're also going to use, now this is spruce, and I'll bring it closer so you can see it, but you can also use a black green for this, and this is my forest green, but you could also use a warm brown green in place of that, and I think you'd get an equally nice color. So I'm going to put you down so we can see what we're going to do, and I will walk you through all the steps you need to know for this final fire. But we won't necessarily do all the steps on the final fire. I think one thing that's important to remember is if you get to a spot where you're afraid that, like say you paint this part and you're afraid to do the edges because you might put your hand here or put your thumb here and mess it up, then fire it. Stop what you're doing, fire what you've got so far, and then finish it. First, I'm going to start by doing a wash. And a wash is when you take a color and you just put it over the whole thing. And this part of my pine cones are going to be really dark right there. So I'm going to put the wash with the baker's brown or pecan, whatever you have, or yellow brown, out here, here, and then I'll do it down here and over on this little guy too. So let's start with it on the main pine cone so you can see what we're doing. So as I said, this one is the lighter one, so I'm just going to start by, let's get a little more oil on there. A little more paint too. Okay, I'm just going to start by kind of washing it. And I'm going to wash a little over here. Can you see I'm just spreading the color around. There we go, right there. Okay. And you'll have to wipe it off the background, clean it up a little bit probably. I can also put a little on here. Well, actually, I'm going to show you this one later because I did it a little bit different. I did kind of two-tone. Now I'm going to take and add a little depth, side loading my brush with the brown. And I'm going to put the depth right here. Oops, sorry. Right here because I want it to be where the one pine cone overlaps the other. But I'm kind of washing it. I'm not doing it like we did the last time real specifically. And then I'm going to pull that color out a little, just like that. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush now real well. I'm going to, again, side load with a little bit of brown. Now, I will be sending out my newsletters. And if you want to sign up for the newsletter, my daughter just dropped the link to my website. Go to the bottom of the page, and at the very bottom of the page, you can sign up for newsletters. They come out bi-weekly every 2 weeks, and that gives you a chance to catch up on some of the things that are going on. I sometimes tell those people things, what's going on before I tell everybody else, so you'll be in the know. Now I'm going through and just darkening, like I did the last time with the side loading. I'm just darkening where I think it needs it. It doesn't need it everywhere, and I'm only just touching the color on very, very carefully, if you can see there. And maybe a little down in here. Okay, so that's what I've done so far. Then I'm going to come over to this side. You always turn your pine cone so you're painting, at least for me, from the bottom because it works better for me. And I'm going to just here, see how I'm putting it on the side that's going to get the light's coming this way from the top. So I'm just putting a little on the inside there to give it a little more color. Okay, and I'm going to hold that away now and look at it and see if I think I've got enough color there or what the deal is. And yes, I think I do. So now I'm going to clean my brush off really, really well because I'm going to use my brush to bring back out the highlights that were there before. I'm going to start on the lighter section because if you look on this lighter section, it's obviously easier to see where the highlights were. And I'm just going to wipe them back a little bit. Get a little more turpentine. Make sure you wipe as much as you can off your brush because the turpentine will run and will cause things to run, and you don't want that. Oops. There. Let me know if there's a problem seeing. I'm trying to keep this in view so you can see what's going on.
That's good.
And then up here, you're going to pull down up in there a little bit and a little right here. Okay, now on this side, I want my light up in this section. So I'm just going to, and I'm wiping it off on my towel in between. Trying to bring out a little bit of the color. There we go. A little bit of the highlight that's underneath. By just doing the very edges. Maybe a little in here. Just to hint that there are other segments of the pine under there. So that's what I've gotten done there. And then here I might do a little bit of the edge of this here just to make sure that going under there is okay. Okay. Now I'm going to do more on the pine cone, but not right at this moment. Let's go down and do the needles here, because I want to work up here first, because otherwise I'm going to get my hand over my other work. I want to make sure that I don't get my hand over everything. So let me show you something before we go any further. Here is the pine from my backyard, a branch from my backyard. Can you see all the little tickies on it? The little, here, I'll bring it real close. The little prickers, things that come out the side of it on both sides here and up in here. Now, that's what we're trying to imitate then as we do the second fire. Remember I said in the first fire, just get your branches in, don't worry about them too much. And on the second fire, we'll make them more dramatic and more lifelike. So I'm going to take my rich brown and dance I'm using my long liner, and I'm just going to dance it back and forth across here. Can you see? And I mean it literally. You want little things to stick out on the sides. If necessary, you can turn it upside down and do the same thing down here. There we go. Let's do a little more back in here. And then I'm going to do a little down here. Trying to get those little pokey things sticking out there. And then I'm going to take my Pinecones, and I'm just going to go back and put a little bit of detail in here. I'm just going back in and giving it a little bit of character. The same thing with over here. Let's go in and give it a little character. Make sure you wipe your tool off from time to time so it's not... Okay. Now, you want to see how it looks? We'll hold up this next to it. We're pretty close, aren't we? I would say we're pretty close. So now we're going to put in our pine needles on this section. I'm working in sections so I don't get my hands in everything. And now with the pine needles, it's the same as before. We're going to just use turpentine if you have it. But if it bothers people or bothers you to use it, then don't use it. Oops, I see here I could use a little more dark. Let me just do that. Get a little... There, okay. Then just use the odorless mineral spirits. And you're going to take and you're going to... Let me show you here. You're going to take and put your liner in and just wipe it a couple of times on your towel, because you don't want it to be so wet that it's going to run. And I've already done my light and my medium greens on here. So this time I'm just taking my spruce or my black green, depending on what you have, and I'm putting that in here. Remember, less is more. Oop. So I made an extra thick one. Here we go. And I'm just going to put them up here and down here. I think I'm going to have to put a little of my medium color back in, because now that I put the dark in, it doesn't... You can roll your liner if you have a long liner. That'll keep the paint on the end there. And it's a flicking motion. You hold it back and you flick like that. Okay. So there's those, and let's put a little up in here. Remember, you can come over your pine cone. And then, like this guy's kind of thick, I'm going to take my Pinecones, I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to flick away from myself. See how that helped? And here, I'm going to flick down a little so that it looks like these are going over my pine cone. There we go. Okay. Now, the final thing we're going to do on the pine cones, at this point, if you want a little more highlight, you can use your Pinecones to wipe out some highlight. But now, this is your last chance to get any highlights in here. So if you want the highlights, you need to do it now, and you need to clean up anything that's out there. Then I'm going to put this down for a moment. I'm going to take my pen, and I'm going to pick up some of the rich brown, and I'm going to use, this is from Dallas, China. It's Easy Flow, AMP5 Easy Flow. There's both an Easy Flow, I know I've told you this before, but I want to make sure you know. And there's also this one, which is a drying pen oil. And if you want to use the drying pen oil, you can. But if you mix it up and you're working on a big piece like this where you're going to need it a couple of times, this will dry up probably before you can use it the second time, and then you've wasted your paint. Whereas this will stay open for the life of your project, which is kind of nice. I put my my knife in on an angle so that the oil's on an angle, so I don't get all my oil at once, so I can mix it in. And that's a little thick, so I'm going to flip it over and mix a little more oil in. Yeah, that seems to be about right. Now, it should almost drip off the end. So if you get a drop, which I have a drop forming there, and you can see it's going to drip in a minute. There we go. That's the correct consistency. So now I seal this up because when it spills, it's a mess. All right. And I'm going to take my pen, and I'm just going to help my pine cones a little bit with some detail. So I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to start on the bottom one, and I'm just going to put a little detail in, back in, on each of these little guys. And I'm going up and over, and then I'm coming down here, making the little V. If there's a V, the V comes down. Get them there. There we go. Here's one. And the V's right there. Here's one. Here's one. Here's one. And then up here, I'm going to come down like this and do a little bit across the edge. The edge is kind of a, let's get it here. Okay, let me show you a pine cone next to that so you can see what it is I did. Here's what I did, and this is what I'm going for. Oh, nope, lost it. There we go. Here, so this is what I'm going for. So that's what I did there, and I put in a little bit of pen work. And if you compare it to the other side, you can see it makes a difference. It really gives you a little more detail, makes it stand out, I think, a little better. So now I'm going to do it on the other side. Same thing. Going to start at the base, and I'm just going to can you see? Okay, when you get the ink on here, Norma, hello, you're going to tap it on your tile. That will help, because sometimes you get a big glob on the end and you don't want that glob going on your china. It'll just make things impossible. So all you're doing is just trying to give a little bit of detail. And where you're behind the pine cone, it's not going to be as noticeable as out in front of the pine cone. And then here, I'm doing this and then coming down to do the little V. And just separating those. Okay. Now let me just do it down here so you can see without all the background color on. Maybe that'll help. But this is what I'm doing. Here, how are these guys? Okay, I got them. This one comes out this way. This one comes out this way. This is the one we're looking straight down on. Here, let me show you the pine cone. This is the pine cone. You're looking straight down on it here. This one comes out this way. Basically what you're doing is kind of like your line drawing. And then on the back ones, you're going up, making a little edge and making that V. That V right there. And this one, you're making the edge. Ah, hang on, I gotta get more ink on here. It keeps coming off, okay. And here, I'm making the edge like this. And here, here, and then I'm just doing the top a little bit. Here. You have to keep loading it. What you're doing is you're outlining each one of those little segments. Only I've done it here after I've done the wash on them. And like right here, I see I missed one, so I'm going to go back. When you turn it, you might see that you missed something. So that's basically what you'll do. Now, when you come to the open one down here, change my brush, go to a smaller brush. And I'm sorry, ladies, there is no really good way to do this, because when you work on a smaller piece, it's not a plate, so it's going to have, the difficulty is going to be in trying to see it. I've full loaded my brush with the pecan. I've side loaded with the rich brown. When you do this kind of a pine cone here, which is a head-on pine cone, you're going to try to keep the depth in the center of the pine cone. So I've loaded my brush, full load of pecan, side load of rich brown, and I'm just doing the centers.
Norma says, interesting watching you, like.
So I'm doing this, turning it as I go, because this is a circular kind of pine cone. And then back here, we're going to just put in the dark where we want it. But here I've done both. I've done a little of the dark with the light on the edge. There we go. This is a very difficult pine cone to see. I know it is. But when we wipe out parts of it, I think it'll be easier for you. Okay. So that's what I've done on that pine cone so far. Now that's not everything. Okay, and now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to wipe out the highlights. And the highlights on the ends. And then I'm going to use my pen. And this is where I would really go back and just make sure I have my ends looking correct. This guy here is a little bit heavy. Let me get him out of there. Yeah, he's heavy. Okay. Pinecones. If you can't get the highlights with the brush, go for the Pinecones. I know this is extremely tiny and I know it's hard to see, but okay. And then I'm going to take this and just go around, running out of my oil. Okay, and just do a little bit of oil, a little bit of defining of those little pine cones. Now remember, this is a secondary pine cone. You're not going to define every little bit. You're just trying to give it a little bit of oomph. And it's just supposed to look like a little pine cone down there. And then we're going to go back now with the liner. I'm using oil, and I'm going to do my branches. And like I said, you're just going to dance back and forth to make that look like it's prickly. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm just doing the little dancing back and forth. Beginners, this is a very simple technique that will get you kind of the look you want for the pine branches. And you can do this on the second fire. You don't need to do it on the first. Looks like I had a little smudging down here. Maybe stuck my hand in it before I put it in the kiln or what have you. So when that happens, I always have to go back and kind of doctor it. Make sure that the branch attaches to the pine cone. It's kind of like when you do acrylic painting too, if you just drag your brush sometimes like this, it'll automatically give you a really cool look. Okay, now back down here, we're going to go back to we're using our turpentine or mineral spirits and just rolling our liner in the color, wiping, turpentine or mineral spirits, wipe it twice on your cloth and then go in and roll it. And then just, I didn't leave enough on. Here we go. There we go. That's better. A flicking motion. Let me get real close here so you can see. And then I'll do a little bit on this guy, not much. He's kind of off in the distance. We don't want to get too. And then up in here, I'm just going to go back in with my Pinecones and just kind of drag it through a little bit. Make it sporadic though. Don't do it all at once. And just try to get some texture in it so it looks like the pine branches. And that's those guys. Okay, so now on my final, I'm not going to do the rest of these. They get way too tiny for you to see. I do have bigger ones on this side. What I did on this one, again, was once I saw where the light was coming from, I pounced once after I let it set up to allow it to really get a little bit of light in it. So I think that helps. And you will start by putting dark under here with the brown and then doing a wash, wash, and then start pulling out your little highlights. Now it helps to hold it away from you so you can see, like here I think I could use one that way. And here I think I could use one this way. This is the last chance you're going to get to add in any of these highlights. And you had them on the first coat, so it's just a matter of going in and retrieving them. So now I'm going to do the handle, the base, and the top in color. And I'm going to eventually do just a band of gold on this band because I just think it's going to make it look a little better. The colors that I used on my vase, originally I put on my forest green, or what would be warm brown green, underneath. I did it all the way around, and then I realized I didn't like it. So then I took my spruce, which is more of a dark green, and put it over, and the combination I really like. So that's what I'm going for on this, and I think I can do it in one fire by mixing the colors as I go on my brush. So let me just show you what I mean by that. Here's the forest green, and let's do down here. This is probably the easiest place to see. It's the biggest spot I've got there. And it's going to take a while. You're going to have to be very patient with this. You may have to pounce it with a sponge or something to get it smooth. If your feathering isn't working for you, remember feathering you hold by the very end, and you just lightly do it like this. Okay, so that's my first color. Now, if you look at it with what I have up above, you may like that. I wanted something a little darker. And so what I'm going to do now is just take, not cleaning my brush, I'm just dipping it in a little oil so that I have a little more oil on my brush. Squishing it around in my spruce, which would be your black green if you don't have spruce, and just mixing it in. And I'll leave a little of the other color so you can see what it would look like. Now I do this to decide what colors I want. And then I usually will take just the spruce, clean my brush. Oh, you really have to clean it with this because the color is very potent. There we go. And I'll take just my spruce, and I'll maybe do a section with just the spruce to see if I would have liked it better with just the spruce. So for a beginner, this is how you would decide what color to use down here. You can take your time and do this test, and it'll help you so you're not wasting all your paint and all your time on this. Okay, so here it is. This is just the green with it, this green. And if I hold it away, well, you really can't, there you can see. It's, I think it's too blue. Then I have the mixture here in the middle, which I really like with it, I think. And then I have this, which I think is a little too light. So I'm going to go with my mixture because I don't want this bluish green. So that's what I'll do. I'll paint the green on first all the way around. I may or may not do the handle on this time simply because I might be afraid I get my, get it messed up. So I would finish this side. I would finish this side. That way it gives me the handle to hold on to work on it. And then I would do the bottom, but you can see my thumb up here. I'm not going to do the top. I'm going to fire the bottom, and then I will bring it out of the kiln. I'll do the top and the handle, holding it by the bottom, and fire it again. And that's how I'll do it. Okay, pick up those brushes, keep painting, and I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed the program. And I hope you'll take a minute to subscribe so that other people can learn more about China painting and we can get the word out to more people. You also can look at the links below. My paintnporcelain.com website has a lot of freebies and printables. for new and experienced painters, as well as studies, supplies, and even some of my hand-painted china. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time.